Alright guys, I'm gonna need you to exercise that power of imagination and picture an all too familiar scene. You're in your early 20s, maybe even 19. You're in a small apartment or dorm room, it's dark out. The place is crowded, but you already know a handful of these people. Maybe there's some music in the background, and there is a lot of alcohol. That's right, I threw you right back into a college party. You already know what the atmosphere is like. I don't think I need to remind you, but ask yourself, why is this scenario so memorable? Or if you haven't been to a college party, ask yourself why the scene sounds so interesting. My guess here is that a college party is an apex moment in our lives regarding pleasure. I mean, yeah, when you first get there, you got the nerves going on and you're a bit shy. I mean, it's a guarantee that you're gonna run into some strangers here. But then you start drinking, and that intimidating stranger now looks like your closest, deepest friend. Then you drink even more and you really start socializing. Maybe your second gin and ginger ale gives you enough confidence to even spark up some flirtatious encounters. But then you keep drinking and drinking and drinking, and next thing you know, you wake up outside in some bushes. Somehow you lose your socks but your shoes are still on, and you feel like throwing up. What happened? I mean, the first couple drinks were pretty good. It even helped calm your nerves. But you just had to keep going, didn't you? You overindulged in all the pleasures of drinking. Now what if we thought of this analogy in terms of all bodily pleasures, not just with drinking? What if we thought about moderation instead of an excess of pleasures? And with that, we could turn our heads towards Aristotle's thoughts on temperance, or the moderation of pleasures. Hello and welcome back to Philosophy Tunes, bringing pop philosophy for the practically minded. Today we're discussing Aristotle's thoughts on temperance as outlined in Book 3 of his Nicomachean Ethics. As always, I'm using the Terence Irwin translation, which will be linked below. So you may be wondering what temperance even is. I mean, at least for me, it's not a very common word used in my vocabulary, and I don't want to hear any y'all lying, being like, oh, I use the word temperance like every 5 minutes. Temperance refers to the moderation of pleasures, specifically bodily pleasures. So something like the emotional pleasure you get when you do a good deed doesn't count here, since it's not a bodily pleasure. Furthermore, not all bodily pleasures count. We have to be a bit more specific here. Temperance then will be about bodily pleasures, but not even about all of these. For those who find enjoyment in objects of sight are neither temperate nor intemperate. The same is true for hearing. So going down the senses list here, sight and sound are out. They're safe. I don't know about this one, guys. I mean, Aristotle even admits that you can enjoy these things excessively, but he still doesn't consider it a part of temperance. What do you think? When we think about being excessive in pleasures in the sense of sight, how do we consider things like pornography? Isn't it possible to excessively indulge in that stuff and even become addicted? Shouldn't this be considered in the temperance discussion? Leave your thoughts below in the comments. Now, since sight and sound are out, what about smells? For someone is called intemperate not for enjoying the smell of apples or roses or incense, but rather for enjoying the smell of perfumes or cooked delicacies. For these are the smells an intemperate person enjoys because they remind him of the objects of his appetite. It is the enjoyment of the things that he is reminded of by these smells that is proper to an intemperate person, since these are the objects of his appetite. So it seems like smell is okay unless your smell reminds you of some object of appetite. So for example, if you go to one of those candle shops and get yourself a Yankee candle or whatever they're called, smelling your misty waterfall mountain candle is fine because you aren't reminded of some object of appetite. You don't want to eat or misty waterfall mountain, I mean, come on. However, if you're walking down the street and you pass by a pizza place and the aroma of the pepperoni special fills your nostrils, that's included in the temperance discussion because it reminds you of an object of appetite. Now, reminder here, these things included in the temperance discussion are not bad per se. It's the overindulgence of these things that are bad. Enjoying these things in a moderate amount is a-okay and even encouraged. This might make more sense once we get into the more concrete senses that are included with temperance. The pleasures that concern temperance and intemperance are those that are shared with the other animals, and so appear slavish and bestial. These pleasures are touch and taste. Now, Aristotle wants to specify that it isn't so much taste that's concerned, but the physical pleasure of eating. So you could be all bougie and engage in wine and cheese tasting, but this isn't the same as going to the Golden Corral and stuffing your face with meatloaf. For taste discriminates flavors, the sort of thing that wine tasters and cooks savoring food do. But people, or intemperate people at any rate, do not much enjoy this. Rather, they enjoy the gratification that comes entirely through touch, in eating and drinking, and in what are called the pleasures of sex. That is why a glutton actually prayed for his throat to become longer than a crane's, showing that he took pleasure in the touching. So if I understand this correctly, it's not the taste that's the issue so much when it comes to the overindulgence of food. It's the sensation of touch? Like the physical sensations you get when you chew your food, swallow, and fill your belly. I think that's what he's getting at here. I don't know though. I haven't seen anyone acting gluttonous around public school cafeteria food. Some barbecue though, absolutely. So to be temperate is to exercise moderation in your enjoyment of these bodily pleasures that focus generally on physical touch. Now remember our discussion of virtues in general, or even on the virtue of bravery in our last Aristotle video? If you remember correctly, the virtuous activity is the intermediate state between an excess and a deficiency. In the case of bravery, the excess was rashness and the deficiency was cowardice. In this case, Aristotle doesn't really seem to talk much about the deficiency of temperance. Clearly then, with pleasures, excess is intemperance and is blameworthy. So our main concern is going to be with the excess of temperance, which is intemperance. Now you could refer back to this video as to why you should pursue any of the virtues we'll talk about, but Aristotle makes some observations with temperance specifically. Cause I mean, why not just overindulge in pleasure? I mean, do you really not want a life of good food, good drink, sex with beautiful people, maybe even drugs? I don't know, pick your poison. Doesn't that sound like the life? Well, Aristotle points out that this sort of life does have some pain involved. Rather, someone is intemperate because he feels more pain than is right at failing to get pleasant things. And even this pain is produced by the pleasure he takes in them. And someone is temperate because he does not feel pain at the absence of what is pleasant, or at refraining from it. So this really connects strongly from our example in the intro about drinking. I'm really thankful to not have developed an addiction to alcohol, but I do know those who have, and it sounds like a tough experience when one is withdrawing from alcohol. I'm not at all involved with drugs, but I hear rough stories about withdrawals there as well. And even sex withdrawals. I mean, I've known people who have gone through dry spells and actually feel strongly affected. So perhaps by enjoying certain things in moderation, you don't grow too attached or addicted to those things. Therefore, maybe not eliminating but reducing the painful effects you get when you withdraw. Now this is the part where Aristotle does have a quick mention of the people who are deficient in pleasures. If someone finds nothing pleasant or preferable to anything else, he is far from being human. The reason he has no name is that he is not found much. Now Aristotle thinks this person isn't found much, but I don't know. I think many people like this exist to an extent. The type of people who aren't passionate about anything or just consume stuff. You might even throw some nihilists in this category as well. I don't think we have to go into why that life is not very preferable. Finally, Aristotle talks a bit about how intemperance, or the excessive indulgence of bodily pleasures, is worse than cowardice. If you remember from our last Aristotle video, cowardice was the deficiency of bravery, which made it a blameworthy vice. Aristotle believes, however, that intemperance is more blameworthy than cowardice because it's more voluntary. I mean, think about it. Can people really control if they're afraid or not? Can you really consciously control yourself during jump scares? I mean, sure, we find ourselves in situations where we consciously choose to be brave, but fear seems less of a choice than indulging in pleasures. Some other considerations for this discussion, however, involve things like anxiety and addiction, which both can affect the level of choice involved in either bravery or temperance. But what do you all think? Comment below your thoughts on any ideas expressed in this video. Would you consider yourself a temperate person? And with that, we come to the end of the video. If you subscribe and comment below that you subscribed, I'll reply back with the name of a philosopher, just a random philosopher. Think of it as a philosopher fortune cookie. Maybe there's some ideas of theirs that your life could use right about now. Help me out with the YouTube algorithm by liking the video and sharing, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.